podcast.
Yes, did at the same time that time. Fair play.
That was
Anyway,
decent.
welcome one and all to What's the Word. If you're here every single week or you're returning, it's always good to have you guys back with us. If you're here for the first time, maybe you don't know what this is all about or anything like that. My name's Eamon, this is Warner, and we have been doing this for, I don't know, a couple of years now at this point.
Years.
We're veterans at this now. We're no longer rookies at the podcast game, but we've been doing this a couple of years. We talk about all sorts, God, Bible, Jesus. We discuss topics. We interview different types of people in all areas of walks of life. We just want to just make kind of theology, make sort of biblical ideas and biblical things really simple, accessible for people that you guys could just sort of tune in, listen to, whatever else. So that's what we're all about here. It's always good to have you. If you are here for the first time, or if it is you're still returning, say hello in the comments. Obviously, I can see Mahongo is already here in the comments. Mahongo's always first, and I respect that. Always here, bright and early. First one's coming.
It's not a competition, but if it was, you'd be winning.
If it was, you would be MVP. But yeah, if you're listening later on as well, actually, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the podcast platform that we're on, give us a follow, give us a subscribe from YouTube, whatever the button's called, to sort of make sure you stay up to date. That doesn't just help you know when we've uploaded new stuff, but also helps us in terms of getting reach out there into the world, which is obviously always handy. And it's free as well. Do you know what I mean? It's free. Even if you don't like it,
that's true.
You're still not.
Free content.
It's free content. Do you know what I mean? But yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to think if I forgot anything there in that intro. Don't think I did. Anyway, moving on then. Let's start how we always do start, which is talk about sort of our week, how it's gone. Warner, so you kick us off. How was your week out of 10? What have you been up to?
My week was a 7.5.
That's a good solid week.
That's what I'm going for. 7.5.
Yeah.
Because I got to spend a bunch of money in work this week and got some new equipment, which is gonna really help us in basically all the different ambitions that we have of doing different things, and capacity for things and stability of things is helping on all those fronts. So that's very exciting. Obviously, that means there's now you have to figure out all the stuff that you got. Do you know what I
mean?
Yeah. Which is that's a different thing altogether. But just getting it, it's just like we've upgraded all the places.
Yeah.
Well, not all the places, but a lot of the places that needed some serious help. Which I think is going to, one thing with us, like streaming really, I don't want to say it changed the game, but it changed the game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our reach has expanded a lot as a church
100%.
Since streaming.
Yeah.
And I think having this better capacity will help that again. So it's been a good week.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything else really that's happened, but
that's it's good. It's a good highlight though.
Decent. I'll take that. Yeah. How about you, mate?
Yeah. I'm trying to think now. Not too bad, not too shabby. I'm trying to think what I did. Because obviously at the moment, as you guys, if you sort of listen to the podcast regularly, you'll know that I'm off now. I'm just off for the next couple of weeks. I start my new job on the 14th of March. So that's 3 weeks away. So I've had nothing to do really. Do you know what I mean? I've just kind of, I've just been sitting home, just sort of reading, playing some video games. Do you know what I mean? So like nothing exceptional's really happened this week. So I mean, if I had to give it a number, I'd have to give it a 10 because nothing's made it go down to a 9. Do you know what I mean? Like nothing bad happened. I guess like some like as you were saying though, like I love the equipment that we bought, like because I'm obviously doing the streaming stuff and things like that. It's stuff that I've got to wrap my head around. And the sound desk, it looks swanky. I'm not gonna lie. We got this new sound desk. I felt like I knew the old sound desk. Like kind of that's where I started in terms of like serving and things like that. I was on that sound desk and I felt like I knew it.
Oh, have we lost Eamon, or is it me? I'm not entirely sure. Trying to figure out if my internet's still on. I think my internet's still on. So, what Eamon was doing. Oh, it's back. You're back. Was that me or was that you?
I'm back. Yeah.
That was you. It was you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
is it all fine now? Is it all good?
Yeah, you're a little bit blurry, but I can hear you fine.
Right. Okay. The Wi-Fi's been poo. Anyway, what I was saying was.
Yeah, your Wi-Fi's good.
Oh my days. I don't know.
It's all right. I can hear you. Keep it going.
Right. Okay. Basically, all I was saying is that, obviously being on the streaming stuff, like all this new equipment, it's now within my domain. Do you know what I mean? And I've got to relearn it, which is a nice challenge, should we say? And I watched you this morning having a go at it, and I was just like, this just looks so complicated. But I'm sure as time goes on, I'll get it.
Yeah, it's one of those where you get a nap as well. Yeah, an app so you can walk around, do it on your foot. Oh, mate, it's incredible! It's incredible.
That's sick. That's I like that.
Hey, it's incredible. It's real. Like, hey, it's incredible. That's what I'll say. Once we figure everything out, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can do live recordings. You can do a bunch of different stuff. It's great. It's very like. Wow. It's not like 10 grand. But we didn't need that. But what it can do, we can do a lot with it. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Fair enough.
That's where it counts.
That's solid. Fair enough. Yeah. Well,
very happy.
Yeah, so it's a decent little week, to be honest, for both of us, I think. But cool cue the wee though. Cool cue the wee. It's not intended. Cool cue the wee. Cool. The cool question of the week, which is obviously as we normally do. We have a little question, and we it's a little fun little would you rather kind of thing. But this week we don't have one because, quite frankly, we've literally scraped the bottom of the barrel with those questions. We have asked every single question that's ever been asked in the history of the world. So this week, your cool question, and we're throwing out to you guys, the audience. So whether you listen to this live right now, or you listen to this later on, or on Spotify, whatever, your cool cue of the week for us is give us some topic ideas of what to talk about here on the podcast. Because ultimately, last year, we compiled a big list. And I think you guys talked about this last week briefly. We compiled a big list, an exhaustive list, and we exhausted, as you guys quote it, we exhausted the exhausted list. we literally rinsed.
We did actually. We did.
We fully went through all these topics that you guys have suggested. So we've run out basically, and we can come here and just kind of talk about topics that we want to talk about, or things that are sort of we're thinking about or reading about recently, whatever else. We can do that, and that's great. But ultimately, if you guys have got something that you want us to look at, we want to be able to look at that, and sort of be able to. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something that you don't necessarily understand. It could be something you don't understand, but it could be something that you're something you're reading about, something you're thinking about, and you want our perspective. Or it could just be a certain maybe like a book of the Bible. You're just like, what is all this about? I don't get what's going on here. Like Lamentations or something. Do you know what I mean? You're like, why is this in the Bible? It's a bit of a rogue book, but throw that in there. Whatever it is, just throw it in there, and we will try and get around to it. Because ultimately, as you said, we want to be able to talk about what you want to hear about. That makes sense, doesn't it? We want to talk about what you want to hear about.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Ultimately, the podcast is for the people, isn't it? Like, we're not. It's not for us. It's for the people.
Podcast for the people. Bit of alliteration.
Yeah, that's what it is. So, anyway, so today we're going to be looking only a little bit, because there's a lot to look at on this topic. To be honest, we're going to be looking at poverty and what's God's position on poverty, God's perspective on poverty. What's God's intended approach towards poverty, or you could say poor financial position, or you could say poor, whatever. The living below the poverty line. Do you know what I mean? That type of, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? We know what I'm.
Yeah.
So there's a few different ways you can go here. I feel like this is quite an interesting one to start off with. So do you know what? I'm just going to say it first, and then let's dive into it. So, poverty point number 1.
Ooh, nice.
Not all poverty is equal. Yeah.
Interesting.
And what I mean by that is, or should I say what God means by that is this. Proverbs 15, verse 16. So we're gonna fire off a few verses here, but most of them are short. I mean, a lot of them are Proverbs, Psalms, some Matthew stuff or whatever. Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil.
Yeah.
Proverbs 28, verse 6. Better the poor whose walk is blameless than the rich whose ways are perverse. And then Matthew 19, 23, 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, truly I tell you, it's hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
Again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. So like God's perspective on poverty is that, well, let me start. The world's perspective on poverty is that all poverty is horrible. Do whatever you got to do to get out of poverty. Do you know what I mean? So if you got to hustle, you got to hustle. If you got to grind, you got to grind. If you got to, cut a few corners, you got to cut the corners. If you got to, twist a few, whatever, you got to do what you got to do. That's the world's perspective. God's perspective is, although poverty is not something that you should, that he wants for you or you should stay in, it's not out of poverty at all costs. And that's very consistent with who God is, because God is always concerned about the heart, the inward, rather than the outward situation. So if you're someone who, that's why a lot of times they do a lot of studies on this, and they find that even though people can be living in poverty, they can actually be a lot happier than people who are rich. Because they've not compromised themselves internally. And that is God's ethos on poverty, is that although poverty isn't good, it's better for you to stay in poverty and have integrity and fear the Lord and be blameless, be right within yourself. Than be a rich person who has perverted everything that could be perverted. Because although for us, it seems like, we have a 90-year window, 100-year window, depends how long you want to live. We might think this is my time and this is all we have. Really, we don't. That's spoilers. We don't. And so there's the way that we live this 90 determines the rest of the time after the 90, which isn't, it's not, you know what I mean?
I know you mean.
And so God's ultimate point is we shouldn't do anything that will corrupt us in that way just to get out of a temporary situation. So regardless of how you look at it, if you're looking at it from like life is actually eternity, and this 90-year period that you might live, or however long it is, that's a short part of your actual being lifespan. Making a decision to change like 0.00000% of your eternity in a negative way isn't worth it. It's better to be in poverty and love Jesus than to be rich and not love Jesus. And so that can be a bit like, whoa, what's going on? You say that God wants poverty, blah blah blah. No, that's not at all what it means. But I just think that's quite an interesting. It's a very interesting perspective, isn't it? What do you think, Eamon?
Yeah, I think like when I saw your notes, I was like, okay, what do you even kind of
Yeah, I
like?
love
What does
it.
that even
I love
mean?
it.
I was like, what?
I
I was
love it.
like, that's a bit strange, but it makes complete sense. You know, it's the fact that it's anything in this world. You can have everything in the world, and you just have nothing. Like I can't remember who said it. There was some famous Christian geezer who said it in a book somewhere that I read at some point. And he was basically saying like you can have everything that this world has to offer, but if you don't have Jesus, you have nothing. But you can have nothing in this world whatsoever and have Jesus, and you'll have everything. And it's this sort of whole idea of is exactly what you're saying. Like it's not about we all have to live like monks and like, do you know what I mean? And put on sackcloth and all this kind of stuff and like parade and that's it and kind of beg on the streets and whatever else. But ultimately, like this world can provide you so much, but if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's not worth chasing everything for it just to pass away. Because it says it, doesn't it? Don't store up your treasures on earth where the moths can eat them away and all these kind of things like this, but store your treasures sort of in heaven. And this idea of everything that's here right now is going to just go. It's going to disappear. It's basically going to be put in the bin. So why chase that when you've got the greatest treasure, the greatest prize, Jesus? Nice.
There you go. Yeah. But also don't take that to mean that God wants you poor. Do you know what I mean? Like
of course.
The anti-prosperity rhetoric of God doesn't want people to prosper is incorrect. Now, prosperity is associated with people who are preaching about you basically giving money to get certain things. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you should pay me and then I'll pray for you. Like that type of thing has been skewed towards prosperity and that type of thing. God wants his people to be as rich as possible, because we're supposed to bless other people. And my dad makes this example, which is if you want to give 1 billion people, which is I don't know what population the world is at the moment, but now you're looking at that's less than 20%, 15% in it, something like that. You're not really touching much of the human population. One bottle of 1 liter water, you need £1 billion today, and that water is only going to last them like an hour. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the church has way bigger things that God has said that we need to solve. So God's intention isn't for us to be in poverty, but his intention isn't for us to get rich through wrong means, incorrect means. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if we do it his way, there's more than enough.
Yeah.
So let's look then at what is God's heart for poverty, people in poverty, etc., etc. Well, hey, he told us, didn't he? That's a good thing. He literally, do you know what he did, guys? He literally pulled open a scroll, and this is what he said out loud: "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." So what this means is that God is in the business of helping people who are poor, helping people who are in poverty, caring for them. Like those are the people that he has come for. He has come to help the people who need help. There's another part where he says, I've not come to help those who are healthy, but to come and help those who are sick. And there he's talking about helping those who are sinners and those who are looked down on in society. And it's the same here. It's that God's heart is to help all those people who are living in poverty, who don't have enough to feed their family, who maybe are going through financial difficulties, whatever it is. That God's heart is to come and tell them that there is good news. And not only is there good news, but that good news is also linked to favor. And we talked a bit, Dad preached a bit on favor today. But favor is good things happening to you that like probably shouldn't, or you being treated well and it's just like, oh, how did that thing happen? Oh, I don't know. It's just I just had favor in this situation. Do you know what I mean? Like things just worked out well for me. That's God's heart, is that everything is that you not only know the good news of Jesus, but even in our day-to-day living, things work out well for us. Do you know what I mean? So then Deuteronomy, no, wait, not this one. I don't know where the other one's gone, but we'll leave that for now. So that's God's heart on poverty. Is that there's a solution for it, and everyone in poverty, his intention is that they should come out of poverty, and we'll look a bit at
sense
a few of the ways that he encourages that. I'll put it that way. But what do you think, Aiden? What do you think on that?
No, I think pretty much you said it quite perfectly. You know that it's exactly what you were saying earlier. You know, God's intention is not that we all sort of sit as paupers, you know, in you know, like monks or whatever else in a monastery, just with nothing, no possessions, no money, no nothing. But God's intention is that, you know, for those who are sort of poor, those who are in need, that they can come out of that needy place, and that they can come into prosperity. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the other stuff, you know, we're going to talk about in a little second. It puts a big sort of demand, obviously, on us, as well as God actually sort of doing that as well. So you may as well just jump off the next bit. You may as well jump
on the next bit. Wait. So let me just put a little cherry on the top, just in case you like. That's only one scripture, Warner. I have another scripture. For he will deliver the needy who cry out, the afflicted who have no one to help. He will take pity on the weak and the needy and save the needy from death. He will rescue them from oppression and violence, for precious is their blood in his sight. So this is linked a bit to the solutions. So that's why I thought this would be a good one. But if you notice, a lot of there are causes to the state that the people are in. And so God's intention isn't only to help the person themselves inwardly. It's not just to save them. It's to alter the thing that brought that situation about. Do you know what I mean? So he's delivering the needy, which means that the needy are in a situation that they need delivering out of. He's come to help the afflicted, but the afflicted need help because no one is helping them. These are all hints about some of the solutions, guys. He takes pity on the weak. No one is there to have pity on them. And not only that, he comes to rescue them from oppression and violence. Meaning a huge part of poverty, a huge part of neediness in our world comes from oppression of other people and comes from violence towards other people. And God isn't like blind. He's aware of this. Which is very good. Do you know what I mean? Because poverty is a big thing. And everyone says that they want to solve poverty, but a lot of the things that you have to do to solve poverty, not a lot of people want to do it because it takes. You know what I mean? And you see that a lot, especially at governmental levels. Like for example, that green thing that we had. That's not poverty related, but that's a microcosm of how it works. Remember the massive meeting that they had? They had this huge green summit a few months ago. Oh, hey guys, let's figure out how we save the. This was like I think wasn't it the 28th one or something? They've met a bunch of times to talk about how we can go green. And you know, they were like, this is the one where we make the change. We've only got 30 years on the earth left if we don't do anything. Right. And so they're talking for ages and they couldn't come to any consensus because each person had to renege on certain things that they didn't want to renege on. Do you know what I mean? So certain countries that were already developed were saying these other people have to do the thing, even though they've already gone through the process of burning all these fossil fuels. Hence why they're developed. The developing countries were like, hang on, we're still catching up, so it shouldn't be the burn shouldn't be on us. And basically, no one wanted to have to take on that burden of what it actually means to live on renewable energy. And so similarly, poverty is one of those things where, we're all, if you're like, oh, I'll give you 3 wishes, everyone's like, well, end world hunger, end poverty. But it's actually like, it's big concept things, radical solution things that need to happen. And God has some that we would also say are quite radical, but I actually think it's a breath of fresh air. So this first one is Deuteronomy 15, 1-5. Eamon, do you want to read this?
Yes. At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done.
Whoa! Hang on. Let's stop right there. Can you imagine? Everyone close your eyes with me for a moment. Right? It's year 1. You've got 10K of debt.
Ooh.
Right? That's 10K of debt. That's a lot of debt. Right?
Yeah.
Year 2, 12K of debt.
Ooh.
Year 3, 7K of debt. You've done some work. Hey,
Decent,
that's
decent.
good. You've been working on yourself. Year 4, 5K of debt. Year 5, yeah?
Yeah.
0 debt. You're debt free.
Hey,
amazing. Yes. Year 6, 2K of debt. Year 7, 8K of debt.
Yeah.
Year 8, 8K of debt. Year 9, 20K of debt. Year 10, 30K of debt. That's crazy, isn't it? Can you imagine you reach year 7 and like all debt is gone completely. Anyone who owes money is gone. Everyone starts afresh.
Wow.
Regardless of what your income is, regardless of how much debt you have or don't have. This is the way that the people of God functioned, or were supposed to function, for literally hundreds of years. Yeah. So that's the first part. Go on, Eamon.
Right. At the end of every At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan they have made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payment from anyone among their own people, because the Lord's time for cancelling debts has been proclaimed. You may require payment from a foreigner, but you must cancel any debt your fellow Israelite owes you. However, there need be no poor among you, for in the land the Lord your God has given you to possess as your inheritance, he will richly bless you. If only you fully obey the Lord your God and are careful to follow all these commands that I'm giving you today.
Yeah. So what do you think of that? So that, I mean,
it's mental. It's mental. I think the mental thing is like so obviously at the end of 7 years you've got to cancel debts, and every creditor must cancel any loan. And like you must not require, like it's almost like repeated multiple times. You know what I mean? Like you must cancel every debt. Every creditor must cancel any loan you've made. You may not require any payment from any one of your own people, for the Lord's time of cancelling debts has come. You may require it from a foreigner, but you must cancel any debt from someone that owes you. There be no poor among you. It's almost like it's just repeating it again and again to be like, all right, if you want to just skip over that bit, let's run back and say again,
just in case
you missed it. Here it is again. You must cancel any debt, and ultimately, like, this is it, because loans and different things like that, they're a way of making money, isn't it? Because you put an interest on the loan and you get some money back, and that's how sort of companies make these loan sharks, stuff like that, make a bunch of cash, because that's how they do it. But the fact that God's like, hang on a sec, scrap that, cancel any debt, that's deep. Like if I'm loaning money, that's heavy. That's like puts a big demand on me to. Like, you've got to have real grace to do that. Do you know what I mean? I'm gonna be real here for a second.
Emma's not going to open a bank anytime soon.
Like it's tough, mate. It's tough.
Linked with this, so this is just talking about loans. This all comes out of God's principle of Sabbath. That's where this is. So if you don't know what Sabbath is, God worked 6 days on creation. That's how long it took him. And he finished on the 7th day. He was like, hey, I've done a good job. I'm going to rest. And he instituted that idea of work 6, rest 1 in life, in the way that we live life. And so it wasn't just for this principle of money and loans, but even as far as land. So if someone owned land, there would come a time where there would be something called the year of Jubilee. And so in the year of Jubilee, everyone's land would revert back to the rightful owner of said land. If you made money during that time, you can keep the money, but the land goes back to the rightful owner of the land. And that was a protection that was put in place to make sure that everyone has an opportunity and there is a grace period for everyone to start at a good place. Do you know what I mean? To come. So if someone has come into poverty because they've lost their land, they've had to do all these different things, God put a provision in place where they have an opportunity to come out of that poverty. Now, what if they decide to sell the land again or whatever? That's a different thing. But God made a provision to say, if you own land and it originally belongs to someone else, you've got to give that land back. Now, can you imagine if we applied that to today? Like, if you applied that to the world that we live in, that type of ethos would start wars.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean?
100%.
Wars are fought over, I want this piece of land.
Yeah.
Let me make an excuse because literally living in it today. Do you know what
right
I mean?
now,
Literally any day we've been told a war could break out because one country, one man wants a particular land. Yeah. And that land is like, no, we're good, thanks, bro. So wars are fought and won over who owns the land. And God's part of God's solution for poverty is that everyone starts afresh again regularly. Do you know what I mean? This is not something that's like every 100 years, every 250 years. Once the deed on the lease runs out, it's like, no. Like in your lifetime, you're going to get a few of these moments. And so if you were someone who was living in poverty, you would know my time is coming. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were living in debt or you were homeless and you didn't have your land anymore, you would know, okay, I'm a year away from having my debts cleared. Or I'm 6 months away from getting my debts cleared. I'm 3 months away from getting my land back. Like, I can change this. So part of God's solution is providing the environment where people who are in poverty have the opportunity to come out of poverty. And so, So Leviticus 19, verse 34, because part of what we read, what part of that was verse 3. It's like, hey, you can still require a payment from a foreigner. Just the Israelites you have to cancel that for. But God also says this: the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourselves, for you are foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So and oftentimes you also see that people living in poverty in a particular country will sometimes be from somewhere else. And because of the tough transition of moving to a new country, you can end up living in a state of poverty even if you weren't living in that state from where you came from. Do you know what I mean? So we see it a lot with immigrants, with refugees, where they might have had a bunch of stuff back where they were, and they've had to leave their country, and now they're living where we are living in our country, and they don't have, they don't have the things that we have. They don't have, the GCSEs. Do you know what I mean? Even stuff like English certificates, which you get through going to school, like you need those things to get a job. Or, you know what I mean? All those different things of just like living life in the UK.
Yeah.
And so similarly, there were all those different things for the Israelites. And God's solution was treat the foreigners that you have living with you as if they were your own people. And the reason for that was because you yourself were foreigners in Egypt.
Yeah.
And then he reminds you who he is. I am the Lord your God. So God is saying, treat people as if they were your own flesh and blood. I mean, as if they were your own people that you try to look after. Because there was a time when you were the foreigner. And part of the issue that we have in our own world with poverty is that we don't have we don't look back a lot at like, oh, this is where we used to be. Do you know what I mean? Having an appreciation for where you or your relatives or the history of your country or whatever used to be gives you a certain perspective and appreciation that you don't have if you weren't there. Do you know what I mean? And so here, God is basically saying to them, you guys, he's being nice because he's saying you were foreigners. But what he's reminding them is you guys were slaves for 400 years and you had no rights in the land that you lived on. So if you have someone who's living in your land, don't treat them the way you were treated. Treat them better. And then he says, I am the Lord your God. And so similar to what we saw in Deuteronomy when he said, if you only obey the Lord your God and be careful to follow his commandments, he's saying, rely on me instead. Don't rely on having to push someone else down in order for you to get wealth. Rely on me. And I will be the one who provides the different opportunities for you, as I've already done. So part of God's solution for poverty, the first half is he provides the chance for people to start afresh. Good. It's a literal grace period for people. So if you just imagine everyone who is now, so I think most people who are living under the poverty line in the UK, a lot of them have debt. Some of them have lost homes. Can you imagine if every person who is living under the poverty line had their debt cancelled next year?
Well,
and so they're starting whatever money they're getting into their family can actually stays in their family. And like I can attest this. Me and Mercy got debt free like a year and a bit ago, something like that. And we had quite a bit of debt before. We got debt free, and honestly, our lives actually changed. And I think sometimes we don't really say that. We don't really talk about debt or getting debt free that much. But when you don't have to pay debts, that's a big, that changes how you can live your life and
100%.
That's massive. Okay, so solution B, because that can be like, oh, what about the people in poverty? You know, sometimes people will say, oh, it's not just about helping them, blah blah blah, which is fair. That's true. But hey, that's why when we did the political podcast, which you can go and listen to, we said that God isn't pro any politics, any political party, because his ideas are just, I mean, if you decided, they could fall in either one. So like this, Genesis 2, verse 15. This is like, I don't think I've got it on here, but I'll just read it out loud anyway. Okay. This is early doors, in case you're wondering. Very early doors.
Very early doors.
God's just created Adam.
Yeah.
And this is what he does. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it. So God's intention in creating mankind is that man would do things.
Yeah.
That's God's intention. So, do you know what I mean? The work came before the fall. And part of how we're supposed to exist as human beings is that there's stuff for us to do and there's stuff for us to care for. And even in eternity, we're not just going to be doing nothing. There's going to be stuff for us to do. God's kingdom is ever expanding.
Yeah.
And so who knows what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing something.
Yeah.
And so another part of God's solution for poverty or being poor, or however you want to categorize it, is find work to do. Find something that you can do. Find something that you can care for. Part of that is because it's purpose driven. And so it gives you fulfillment where even in a bad situation, you can still feel like there's purpose to my life, because there is. But also that is the provision that can help change the situation. And so part of the problem as well with it is when we try and solve the issue of poverty without equipping the people who are in poverty to get out themselves. So the water bottle analogy that I used before, it makes no sense to spend 1 billion to help 1 billion people get one bottle of water for one time. If you can spend 1 billion to help 200,000 people never have to worry about water again, that's a different. You're having a much bigger impact than that. And so God's intention is that everyone should work, should find something that they can do, that they can look after, that they can care for. And then Proverbs 14:23. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. So here it's talking about inaction, and it's good to have ideas. But if we need to put those things into action, otherwise, we have nothing. And so similarly with faith without works is dead. You can say that you believe, but if you don't do anything about that, then you're not living that out. And so that's part of the provision. Is that God's encouragement is find something to do, whether it's whatever skills you have. Find some way that you can do it, and whatever you're doing, work hard at it. And as you're doing that, and there's so many more scriptures we can look at, but obviously we don't have time. So one more. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. So again, it's the idea of how do we approach life. And so there are some, for example, in our society, where there are certain work benefits or certain things like that, there are certain areas of society, not huge portions, but certain parts, who are happy to live under the poverty line because it means they don't have to work. And it means that they can just relax and just do whatever they want. And if you read the parts that we read earlier, you could think, what is this, some socialist regime where, you know what I mean? Like no one has to do anything and everyone gets, there's no consequences because, I'll just not work until Jubilee year, I'll get my land back anyway. That's not God's perspective at all. God still says, I have work for you to do. And don't be lazy in your work hard, be diligent in what you're doing, which means be consistent, do it well, don't try and fudge the numbers or whatever, and trust in me as you're doing all these things, and I will bless you, I will bring you out of poverty, I will bring you wealth. And so that's just a little bit, but hopefully that is relatively well-rounded look.
It was good.
Quite a difficult subject, I think.
It's very tricky. It's like literally what I said. Like when you text me saying, "Oh, let's do subject," I was like, "Oh, I don't even know I don't even know where I would even kind of like start with this subject, but I think you did a really good job. And like one of the the hard work and things like that. One of the people that really stands out in that is our friend Axel. We should get him on the podcast to talk about his story.
Yeah.
Honestly, that man, he grinds, he grafts, and he grinds. He's in uni full time, and like he works full time, and like he came here sort of seeking asylum and things like this, and like the position, like just seeing that growth of where he was when he first sort of came. I was sort of seeking asylum to where he is now. Like he's got a car, he's got like a convertible or something. Do you know what I mean? He's like waiting for the summer to whip it out. He's got a motorbike. Like he's doing really well. Like he's in uni. Like, but he's such a hard worker, and honestly, like the guy, we definitely get him on the podcast to tell his story and different things like that. But as well, like one of the things I find really cool, it was sort of in the Deuteronomy one, and it says, and there need be no poor among you. And it reminds me, obviously, in Acts where it says, and there was no need among them. And it's this sort of, and so I think in Acts as well, it sort of says how they sold their possessions and there was no need among them. And it sort of made it sort of like, and it puts a big demand on us, if we're talking about sort of wealth and working hard to build wealth or whatever else, like, our job is not to just sort of hoard it for ourselves, as we've been saying, or like keep it to ourselves, but like, how can I bless somebody else? How can I help somebody else out? And I know we've benefited from that in terms of when we just went to Bible school, for instance, and people sort of going, here's what we've got. We're going to help you out a little bit and things like that. And I think that's sort of a part of the the something I would like to hear more about. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's such a cool sort of concept and idea, and how you put that into practice. I don't personally know, but I would love to sort of talk more on that. But that was a good job, mate. You did a great job of that.
Cheers. And the truth is that poverty won't be met in the world, because the way to solve poverty, which is what God has just showed us, is too, like, there's too much pride in the world to actually do those things. But the church is a place where that can be a reality. So when God tells us as the church that there need not be any poor among us, he's calling us to live differently to how we've been conditioned to live by the world. And so that's the process of renewing our mind to, do you know what I mean, of how do we interact with people who are in poverty. If we are in poverty, what can I do? What can I find to work and to make the most of the opportunities that I have? Do you know what I mean? It's incredible. It's great. It's incredible.
It is great.
God's when you actually look at God's standards, it's a mad.
It's mad. It's madness.
Okay. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Please send in any topics, etc., that you have. If we've got nothing to talk about, we've got nothing to talk about. Do you know what I mean? But we hope we have something to talk about.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Hopefully you liked it. If you did like it, let us know by leaving us a review, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.